Welcome back to the TWSN YouTube channel. I'm your host, Aidan Maher, and I'm joined by my co-host, Logan Fulmer. And today, we are talking fantasy football and free agency. We're merging the two together. It's the first day of the legal tampering period, but really day one of free agency. And we want to take a look at some of the biggest takeaways from a fantasy football perspective. You know, a lot of teams making some moves here. Who are the winners? Who are the losers from these new players going to new teams? There's a lot to talk about. But Logan, where do you want to start first?
Yeah, I think there's still some major dominoes that need to fall, but I think the one team I kind of wanted to start with gave out a really interesting contract that surprised a lot of people, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars, specifically the Christian Kirk deal, giving him like $21 million a year approximately. Absolutely insane. But from a fantasy football standpoint, they've done a lot of things today. I think if you're a Trevor Lawrence owner, you got to be pretty happy. So I think that's probably a pretty good starting point for us to talk about in the Jacksonville Jaguars as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at this Jaguars team, the winners and the losers. I'd start with the winners, and one is Trevor Lawrence. I don't know how this is going to work from a real life standpoint. I personally would kind of see them as losers from that scenario. But for Trevor Lawrence's fantasy value, we like the long-term projection. He's very talented. He can run the football. We love all that. But we saw what he did in his rookie season, and it wasn't very pretty. And as much as some of those were rookie struggles, he got better as the year went on. And the biggest reason he didn't take that breakthrough point is because the situation around him was really bad. Coaching staff was bad. O-line wasn't great. Weapons weren't great. Overall situation was terrible. Now you're upgrading the coaching staff. I mean, it can't get worse than Urban Meyer. You're adding a guy like Brandon Scherf. You're shoring up the offensive line. You're adding weapons. Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram. We can talk about how Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, whoever is an overpay. That's why we don't love the Jaguars from a real life standpoint. But for fantasy football, this absolutely bumps up Trevor Lawrence's immediate value. And that's awesome if I'm a T-Law owner. And another winner, in my opinion, is Evan Ingram. I know a lot of people are saying, I'm never touching Evan Ingram again. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I get it. He's burned you multiple times. Absolutely. He's inconsistent, can't stay on the field. But I am glad he's getting a new start. A fresh start in Jacksonville on a one-year prove-it deal. I know a lot of it's fully guaranteed, but he's kind of betting on himself to go out, prove his worth, and then get a bigger long-term contract in the offseason. That's really Evan Ingram's plan. So I'm intrigued to see him in an offense led by Doug Peterson, who's coached guys like Zach Ertz before. I'm not guaranteeing a tight end 1 finish from Evan Ingram, but right now he's priced at like a high-end tight end 2, and he's got the ceiling of a tight end 1. I would still consider that type of upside, and my loser would be Laviska Shenault. Too many slot guys here. Christian Kirk can play the slot. Evan Ingram can play the slot. Travis Etienne was apparently due for some slot snaps. Who knows with the new coaching staff? But now you're looking at Laviska Shenault, who has the versatility to take some handoffs and whatnot. But if he's not getting a lot of slot snaps, there's a chance he gets buried on this depth chart and we don't hear about him again because he had a really bad sophomore season. And as much as a lot of people want to, coin Christian Kirk a winner, I personally can't see it. I would say his fantasy value really hasn't changed too much for me. I know he's the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but again, Jacksonville isn't going to play him in the slot as much as Arizona could have, and they did. And their offense simply is not as explosive as Arizona's.
Yeah, some points that kind of go off of what you said. The whole Evan Ingram thing is really interesting to me. I would agree that he's probably a winner here more likely than not. And I think something you can look at is Dan Arnold's production there last year was sneakily good, and I mean, you have to think Evan Ingram is better than Dan Arnold at the very least. So I guess maybe you can chop up Dan Arnold as a little bit of a loser here in some. If you're stashing Dan Arnold, I'm sorry, it's probably not happening anymore. Then Christian Kirk, I don't know if I wanted to decipher him as a winner or loser. I think the opportunity itself, is a winning situation for him. Like if you're a Christian Kirk owner, you feel okay about it. Just because, when he's been in Arizona, he'll have that month stretch where he's really good. And then he just sucks again. So maybe he'll turn that 4-week stretch into like a 6-week stretch, or maybe he'll go 2 weeks and then blah blah blah, then 2 weeks maybe. But I just don't see that consistency coming out from him. And if it does, he could be really good. But I don't know if I see it. So by far the biggest winner for me has to be Trevor Lawrence. You get the protection, you get weapons. We all know Trevor Lawrence didn't really impress anybody too much his rookie year, especially from a fantasy football standpoint. But I think it's a good time to look at Trevor Lawrence as a big winner here, and you got to like what they're doing so far in day 1 of free agency.
Absolutely. He was my QB8 in Dynasty Superflex heading into the week. He's not changing because he was already very high on my list, but I'd assume he's going to rise up some rankings. But I want to touch upon the Miami Dolphins next because they acquired Chase Edmonds and Cedric Wilson. Those are two, notable acquisitions. They were pretty busy today. I started on the Jacksonville Jaguars one, so I want to let you kick us off with the Dolphins, Logan.
The Dolphins is interesting to me. The Cedric Wilson fit. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know how good he is as an actual player. I mean, his opportunity share, I don't think is going to change that much. Like he was a 3-4 on, the Cowboys. He's going to be probably, in the same pecking order. You still got Waddle. You still have Gesicki, Devontae Parker. Maybe he fights with Devontae Parker over there. Maybe more of a long-term solution. I don't know about right now. But Cedric Wilson doesn't do much for me. I don't really care for it from a fantasy football perspective. From a real-life standpoint, I get it. It's okay. But, man, I'm a big Chase Edmonds guy before he went to Miami.
Yeah.
I really am. I get him as many places as I can. I love pass-catching running backs, and I think he's a perfect fit in Miami. I don't think there's a better place for him that he could have gone. If you want to chalk up a winner here, I love Chase Edmonds. Obviously, loser, Myles Gaskins, if you're still clinging on to him for whatever reason. But I love Edmonds' pass-catching ability. Averaged 5.1 yards per carry last year. The Dolphins probably still need to boost the offensive line a little bit for him to be pretty productive, but I think Mike McDaniel's coming over from 49ers. Chase Edmonds is a fit like a glove in what he's going to want to do, and I'm pretty excited for him.
Absolutely. I look at Cedric Wilson. He's the one that I really have question marks about because, look, he was a 6th-round selection, good route runner, got good size, but is he really an off-the-charts athlete or, off-the-charts yak guy, anything like that? He's not. He's nothing special at the wide receiver position. But this is intriguing because he enters this offense as a potential wide receiver 2, really. And I know Jalen Waddle's their wide receiver 1, obviously. And, you got to battle with Gesicki and Devontae Parker, who I'd love to see get a fresh start. But Cedric Wilson could be a winner here. He saw less than 50% of the snaps last year in Dallas. When he entered as the wide receiver 3, when any of Gallup, Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, any of those guys missed time, Wilson kind of produced pretty well because that's such a high-volume offense with so much scoring. But here in Miami, he might be a consistent option week in and week out in this offense. Again, I don't love it. I'm not rising him too much on my rankings, but I do think he might be a slight winner here. And Chase Edmonds is absolutely a huge winner. I'm totally with you on that. I know the offensive line's bad. I get that. And Chase Edmonds clearly is not a workhorse running back, but he's clearly going to take over as their receiving back. He's going to see a good amount of carries, potentially more than he saw in Arizona last year, just because this running back room is so bad. And he does fit this offense like a glove. Mike McDaniel, he's creative. He's going to get these playmakers involved. They were definitely looking for more playmakers outside of Jalen Waddle, and they got one in Chase Edmonds. It's a horizontal offense. So, you're passing the ball horizontally, a lot of outside stuff. You're not running up the gut with Chase Edmonds in this offensive line. So I really love the fit for Chase Edmonds. He's definitely a big winner. And obviously, Myles Gaskins a loser. I think we've all been saying it. Sell him while you can. Sell him while he's still towards the top of that depth chart because they're obviously going to get one, if not more, replacements for Gaskin. At this point, he is really just a handcuff, nothing more. He's not going to get starting snaps for this team.
Yeah, I'm there with you. You mentioned it a little bit there. We talked about Chase Edmonds leaving Arizona. How do you feel about, Arizona giving James Conner his deserving payday and kind of making him and giving him the reins as their RB1?
I'm glad it's a front-loaded deal because as much as I love James Conner, love the story, I was on him last year in redraft league, so I'm happy he popped, had him in a couple teams. I don't love him from a long-term perspective. There have been some durability issues. He's already 26, 27 years old, if I'm not mistaken, on that number. And the thing is, I'm just against paying running backs. This deal is going to pay him over $7 million annually, average, when we average everything out. I know that third year is a bit cheaper than that, but, man, I just think it's too much for a running back. And I know, again, Arizona lost Chase Edmonds. They don't re-sign James Conner. Who's going to be their guy? I'd assume it's not going to be, Benjamin. They're going to have to sign somebody else. But, look, I just think it's an overpay. I'm not a fan of paying running backs that much money, especially when they're getting older and they have the injury history that James Conner has. So I love him in the short term still. 20 touchdowns is not going to be, he's not going to repeat that. He'll regress from that number. But yeah, next year, still in a very good Arizona offense. When he's healthy, he'll produce because he's going to be their workhorse again. But from a long-term perspective, I don't think he's going to keep this up for the entire 3 years of this deal.
I agree. I think with Connor, the thing that like I've always been kind of just faded him a little bit is that injury history. And last year he didn't really have that, and I think a lot of it was Chase Edmonds being there, and then he got hurt, then he kind of took over, and Chase Edmonds came back and kind of
Yeah.
spelled him a little bit when he was probably getting worn out. So I think that. I don't know if it's gonna be Benjamin or not, but I think whoever that other running back is there, maybe they draft a guy. I think that'd be a good spot for a rookie running back. Maybe like a James Cook, one of those pass catching backs to spell James Conner. I think that'd be awesome, and I'd be much higher on that person just from a long term standpoint than James Conner. Obviously, I think for the next year, like redraft standpoint, James Conner's, probably where you would rank him pretty decently high, nothing crazy. RB2, higher RB2, touchdown upside should be there. But just in general, like long term, I'm not too in on him. It could be fine for a year. But just the injury concerns, he's not always the most consistent guy in the world. It's a whatever deal for Arizona. I think it's just kind of they panicked when Edmonds left. He left really quick, and Connor wasn't going to sign a 1-year deal, so they just gave him 3-year front loaded. It is what it is at this point.
Right. And I'm looking at it, Benjamin, I know there's a lot of people that were getting excited about him out there. I do like him as a handcuff. James Conner has that injury history. Benjamin's the RB2 there right now, so there's definitely some handcuff, ability there. Jonathan Adams, too, a bit of a receiving back. I'd assume they acquire somebody to be the Chase Edmonds-esque player, the lightning to the James Conner thunder, per se. But for now, Jonathan Adams definitely holds a bit of value in case they don't acquire one of those receiving backs. Or sorry, I should say Jonathan Adams. He does hold a little bit of value there as that receiving back. I wouldn't put too much stock into him, but maybe a deep sleeper in your fantasy leagues. I want to move on, though, to Mitchel Trubisky. This is the big quarterback move of free agency, really. I know Jameis Winston's going to be up there as well, but Trubisky is really probably going to be the most noteworthy one, especially with him going to Pittsburgh, such a touted franchise, and whatnot. But Mitchel Trubisky going to Pittsburgh is very, very interesting. Obviously, sat a year in Buffalo. His start of his career in Chicago wasn't too bad. Had a Pro Bowl appearance, which we all kind of joke about, but end was bad. It was rough, man. So, Logan, I know you have some interesting thoughts on this because you're not as high on the Mitchel Trubisky signing to Pittsburgh from a fantasy standpoint as a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, from a real life standpoint, it's fine for Pittsburgh, but just from a fantasy perspective, I think if you're gonna chalk it up to winner and losers here, the only winner is Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, he could be a sneaky low QB2, but nothing crazy. He's going to be inconsistent. They're going to run the ball a lot. He's still not as good of a thrower as people. I mean, that's why he was not a starting quarterback. Like, I know people want to cling on to it, but it's just like just because he's their starting quarterback doesn't make somebody good. Like, I know the Steelers are supposed to be good, and I think Mitchell can be fine. I think he can lead them to the playoffs pretty easily. That team's pretty talented over there. But I just don't see him, airing the football out a lot. I don't think there's much value change to Deontay Johnson, to Chase Claypool. There's just not. I mean, maybe Pat Fryermuth could be a slight winner. I feel like maybe Mitchell plays a little safer. But as in general, I don't feel like anybody sees really much of an increase or decrease. The only big winner here for me is Mitchell Trubisky. And new change of scenery. He can use his legs a little bit. Presents you a little awkward, kind of higher floor, I guess, but really limited ceiling for now anyway, until we haven't seen him play in a year. Let's not forget.
Right.
Like, maybe he got a lot better. Maybe he didn't get any better. Maybe he's still Mitchell Trubisky. We all know. But there's potential there. That's all it is for me right now is really potential. If you're banking on Mitchell Trubisky to do anything, or if you're banking from, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool to see more targets, more air yards, it's just probably not going to happen.
Well, I definitely view Mitchel Trubisky as the biggest winner here, obviously. I was vouching for him as a buy low target in fantasy football because I knew he's going to land a starting job. And I really do like the landing spot for him in Pittsburgh. I don't know how they're going to utilize him. I'm hoping it's a lot of RPOs, a lot of play action to just avoid some turnovers and also maximize his legs because Trubisky is not an elite runner, but he's certainly underrated. And that'll certainly give him a boost in terms of fantasy value. Obviously, rushing value is king at the quarterback position. But in terms of passing the football, there's a lot of passing volume here sneakily in Pittsburgh. They love to throw the football. They, in the run game, their offensive line isn't great right now, so the efficiency of that is obviously on the downslope in Pittsburgh. So they're going to be forced to throw the football a little bit because of that. And we saw that last year with Ben Roethlisberger, who couldn't even throw the ball downfield. So I'm really interested to see how they utilize against Trubisky, but I absolutely see upside as a QB2 here. Currently priced as a higher end QB3 now that he's a starter quarterback in Pittsburgh, but we saw him finish as a top 15 quarterback back in 2018 with the Chicago Bears. And if he can put up similar numbers, he's going to have another finish that's like a mid QB2. And again, at his current price point, that's a win. But keep in mind, that's his ceiling. You're not getting a QB1 here with Trubisky, but he is a nice value in fantasy. Not as much of a buy as he was a couple of weeks ago, but still a winner from this situation nonetheless.
Absolutely. It's just potential with him. If he hits it, he's probably gonna, impress people. And like you said, his ceiling's not QB1, no. range, but he can be a solid bye week fill-in, matchup dependent kind of guy. If they do continue to throw the ball like that, maybe his value does increase, but I don't see too much. Obviously, Mitch is a winner. He's a starting quarterback now compared to a backup, but not too much change elsewhere for me.
Yeah, and in terms of the pass catchers, I do view them as slight winners here just because it's an upgrade over Mason Rudolph. No matter how you slice it, Mason Rudolph doesn't cut it, and Trubisky is better. I don't care what you say about Trubisky. He is better than Mason Rudolph. So for Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, whoever it may be, this is an upgrade. I'm not sure it's an upgrade for Najee Harris because Trubisky does run a lot more than Mason Rudolph. He'll probably check down at least a little less just because he does run, have the ability with his legs. So Najee Harris is a loser here, very dependent on his receiving value given the inefficiencies of that run game in Pittsburgh and the amount they like to throw the football. So again, I do see that as a slight loss for Najee Harris. But I want to move on next to the New York Jets because they acquired C.J. Uzomah today. They brought back Braxton Barrios. Some smaller moves, but still some significance here.
Absolutely. I mean, they really beefed up the trenches too. It's kind of what they've done the last few off seasons. Lincoln Tomlinson coming in today. Obviously a very good guard from the 49ers, kind of following Robert Saleh, over here to New York a little bit. But yeah, I think Zach Wilson and C.J. Uzomah are pretty big winners here. You're getting protection, you are. It's just, it's important. Like, obviously people see how quarterbacks play when they're under pressure to when they're not when they're pressured. And it's completely different. Zach Wilson's numbers weren't the best last year in total, but he showed a lot of flashes, way more than people really want to give him credit for. I mean, they still have Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, added Barrios back. And, I mean, the 49ers covet their tight ends. Obviously, they kind of brought that system over to the Jets, and the Jets hadn't had one. And C.J. Uzomah had a sneaky good year for the Bengals as, like, the fifth option. So I think for C.J., it's a pretty big win. He's a pretty big winner here. I still don't see him, being a crazy tight end one or anything, but, like, he's going to have his tight end 1 weeks. He's going to catch some touchdowns. He's probably going to see a little more volume. I think it's pretty simple. Zach Wilson, obviously, kind of like just Trevor Lawrence. You're building protection. You're getting a little bit more weapons.
Yeah.
You're just kind of starting to build around your rookie quarterback. And then, giving him a weapon in C.J. Uzomah that should be a good scheme fit there. I think it's two people that kind of fit like a glove there. Obviously, Zach Wilson's been there, but they're kind of building around him perfectly, I feel like. So I'm pretty excited to see what this Jets offense as a whole does this year.
Yeah, same here. I don't see anything significant in terms of the pass catchers, but the addition of Laken Tomlinson is huge. So Zach Wilson's absolutely a winner. You bring back Braxton Barrios, who he clearly had a rapport with towards the end of the season. Barrios had his two best weeks in those two last games he played. He put up 17 fantasy points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the week before that, I believe it was against the Saints or the Dolphins, he put up 10. And those were the only two games he saw 80% or more of the snaps. Definitely benefited from Jamison Crowder, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis being out. So I wouldn't be too high on Barrios. He's still very much a depth guy in that offense, but the commitment of a 2-year, $12 million deal with $7 million guaranteed tells me that they do have some sort of commitment to him in this offense, and Barrios will capitalize on the opportunity when it's given to him. So again, I do see this as a win for Zach Wilson. The situation's improving around him. It can't hurt a rookie quarterback, right? But I do want to, before we wrap things up, if there's any other winners or losers that you want to get to, I know I forgot to get to one, and that's Rondell Moore. I view him absolutely as a winner from this. He can fill in both the Chase Edmonds and the Christian Kirk roles a little bit each. I mean, we saw Moore get involved with plenty of, outside runs, screens. That's a lot of the same role kind of that Chase Edmonds was used in, right? Get him the ball around the line of scrimmage, get him out in space. That's the same thing they tried to do with Rondell Moore last year, and it actually worked pretty well. Now with Edmonds gone, I'd only assume that role increases for Rondell. And in terms of the Christian Kirk role, Kirk was a guy who eventually started to see more snaps in the slot. He was truly a slot guy, but can still win downfield at times with his speed. And I think that's the same thing with Rondell Moore, a true slot guy who can also win downfield with his speed. So he's just a Swiss Army knife in a pretty creative offense, which I like that fit in general. But now that Chase Edmonds and Christian Kirk are gone, I think he's going to fill a little bit of both those roles, which is great for Rondell Moore's fantasy value.
Absolutely. And my dynasty shares of Rondell Moore are extremely happy today. Got a lot of them. But we just kind of talked about the Jets a little bit. I don't know if this player is on the Jets specifically yet, but I think whoever's going to get the bulk of their carries is probably going to benefit a lot. This offensive line is going to be pretty good. Michael Carter, yeah, he's going to get some carries, but I don't know if he's going to be their actual leading and rushing attempt.
No,
I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe they draft a guy. I don't think Tevin Coleman was on a multi-year deal. I don't know if he was. Ty Johnson, there's not much there. So whoever is, maybe it is Michael Carter, maybe it's Tevin Coleman, but whoever it is, running behind that offensive line is probably going to be pretty easy. You got it from a fantasy standpoint. You got to hope it's Michael Carter, just because he's going to get the receiving. He's going to get the receiving work as well. But yeah, even if they add one in the draft or free agency, whoever's going to be kind of their power back, I like a lot. Who's probably going to be super cheap. I think whoever's running the ball behind that Jets line is probably going to have more success than people think.
Yeah, they did re-sign Tevin Coleman today. I think that's more of a depth move. I really did believe they would either sign a Melvin Gordon, sign a Ronald Jones, and if they don't do that, I do believe they'll draft somebody in when the draft season rolls around late April, early May there, because Michael Carter is not a workhorse back. I'm a big Michael Carter fan. He'll get a bulk of the receiving work. Ty Johnson will be the secondary receiving back. And then when it comes to carries, I think they'll split it between Michael Carter and whoever that next running back is they acquired. Because I don't see a world where Michael Carter is used as a workhorse back, especially in the running game. Maybe in the passing games he gets most of the work. I could absolutely see that. But he just does not have the build of that 20-plus carry a game type of guy. But he's absolutely a winner considering the offensive line's improved. And so far, the Jets haven't added a running back, but that is probably surely to come. But that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Had a lot to get to here in day one. It is currently 9 p.m. Eastern time on Monday night. So if there's any moves that happen after this that you're like, how did you not mention that? It's because chillax, okay? We haven't gotten that far just yet. Maybe me and Logan will hop on again at some point this week and break down some more of the moves. This was a lot of fun, and I'd absolutely be down to do that, because there's going to be a lot to take away from a fantasy perspective. This is only day numero uno, guys, so just keep that in mind. But that's going to wrap it up for me and Logan, and we'll see you guys next time.